All right, welcome in. It is the Breer Report for Thursday, November the 20th, a mailbag edition. As always, we got more answers to more of your questions on the website at themmqb.com, so be sure to check that out. But as always, right here, right now, we are going to answer your questions. First one's coming from Dexter. That's at Summer is Nigh. What do the Lions need to do to turn things around? Dexter, I think this is relatively simple. A lot of it's going to come down to the play of their offensive line. I still think this is one of the most talented teams in all of the NFL with the highest ceiling of any team in their own division and one of the highest ceilings in all of the league. And you look at the players that they've got all over the roster. There really aren't any glaring weaknesses. I would look at like what they've got offensively in particular with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta when he's back healthy, Jamison Williams, the explosiveness he brings to the table, the backs and Montgomery and Gibbs. I think a really efficient quarterback in Jared Goff. It's all there, all of those pieces from those great offenses that Ben Johnson orchestrated for the last couple of years. It's all there. And I don't think that the loss of Johnson, as great as he was, has to be completely debilitating. But what he had that this group has not had, and this is going to be the key, is dominant play from the offensive line. And you look at the really great offensive lines that the Lions had over the course of the last few years, you were getting top of the league tackle play from Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. May not be getting that anymore. When they were at their best, you had maybe the best center in the league in Frank Ragnow. He's retired. You had really strong veteran interior play with Kevin Zeitler and Jonah Jackson before he left for Los Angeles at the guard spots. And there's just a different group now. So I think the idea of where the Lions are now versus where they've been, yeah, it's easy to focus on the turnovers Jared Goff had the other night. It's easy to focus on the fact that Ben Johnson isn't there anymore. But to me, the foundation and the identity of those great Lions offense was always through the offensive line. And, I felt this way about the Chargers too. When the Chargers lost their two tackles, it's almost like you go back to those great Giants teams of the past when they were winning Super Bowls and they had Justin Tuck and Osi Umenyiora and Michael Strahan and Matthias Kiwanuka. They kept feeding the pipeline with more and more pass rushers. And I remember the philosophy there for their general manager, Jerry Reese, is we can never allow this not to be a strength. And that's sort of where some of these teams are with their offensive lines. The Chargers, again, built their team that way, and the Lions certainly built their team that way. When they already had a franchise left tackle in place, when Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes got there in 2021, they drafted a tackle in the top 10 in Penei Sewell, and they said, we are going to make this the foundation of our team. And that's the background that Dan Campbell came from in New Orleans. Sean Payton's best teams were always built through the offensive line. So that, to me, is the key. Hank Fraley, their offensive line coach, is going to have to earn his money. They need to be better on the offensive line. That is what's missing. That's the biggest thing that's missing when you compare this team on offense versus the other teams. I think the defense is going to be just fine. The defense should be better than it was a year ago going into the playoffs, just based on health alone. And based on the fact that they've got Aiden Hutchinson playing at a defensive player of the year level. So the defense will be there. It's can the offense get right? And I think whether or not the offense gets right based on what they have right now, it's going to be on that offensive line. Question number 2. This is from Curb Stomper. That's at Curb Stomper. What's the future of the Raiders with an aging coach who seems to have lost his fastball and wants to win now? Seems like the philosophy of the coaching staff and front office aren't aligned. Brady couldn't have liked what he saw on Monday night. Well, first of all, Curb Stomper, I do think a lot of things are going to be under evaluation when we get out of this season. And, obviously things haven't gone according to plan for the Raiders. I know that they felt like at the very least, like this could be like a 6 or 7 win team. And again, I don't think anybody thought that they were going to the playoffs, but this could be a 6 or 7 win team where when you got to December, they were the team that nobody wants to play. It didn't look like that on Monday night. I will see what it looks like against Cleveland on Sunday, a little bit of a lesser opponent. Geno Smith hasn't looked great. The receiver position's a mess. Brock Bowers has been hurt. Ashton Jeanty hasn't lived up to expectations. There are holes on defense. They knew they were far away from a roster standpoint. So what they're going to be evaluating, and what I think the important thing for them to evaluate over the last month of the season is, are the young players on the roster ascending? Can you see where Pete Carroll's taking the program? Do I think Pete Carroll is completely safe? Probably not. Like I just think Tom Brady's influence on that place is an important thing, and I don't know what his level of patience is going to be. We have no track record on that. Obviously they've got a new general manager in John Spytek who was with Brady in Tampa, who's aligned with Brady. So it's just going to be interesting to see the way that all of that goes. And again, like I think it's going to come down to, and this is where you're going coming out of all of this. A lot of it's going to come down to, is Ashton Genty developing? Is Brock Bowers developing on the defensive side of the ball? Do you have some young players developing? Is the offensive line getting better? Are you getting something out of Jack Bash down the stretch? He was a second round pick for them. That to me is going to be the key. It's like, can you see where the program is going? Brady's going to have a heavy hand in the way the Raiders are run going forward. So certainly, I think nights like Monday night couldn't have sit well with him. And if things aren't sitting well with him, I think that has an impact on the way that things go going forward. Finally, our third question, this is from Sami Mamu. That's at Sami Mamu _ I beg of you, bring some reason to the rookie third string quarterback behind a rookie second string quarterback not getting first team reps conversation. This is relatively simple, Sammy. When you're in season, right? Like this isn't training camp anymore. The reps that you get are very valuable. And generally, backups aren't going to get a ton of those reps because you're trying to get your starters ready to play. You can think back to whatever sport you played in high school and just think about what practice looked like during the week, right? Like what practice would look like as you're getting into playing games. And were the backups getting a lot of reps, or were you getting the starters ready to play in the games? Like it's as simple as that. And so, with a rookie quarterback in there and Dylan Gabriel, the Browns were doing everything that they possibly could to have Dylan Gabriel as ready as he could be to run the offense and to give the other 10 guys in that huddle the best answer they probably could. Shedeur Sanders, again, and I know it's hard for people to hear this, but he's been viewed by people in that organization as a developmental prospect. Most teams that sat down and talked with him before the draft felt like he was behind. And they felt like, coming out of having worked with an NFL coordinator in Pat Shurmur, that he had a longer way to go developmentally than they thought he would, which is part of why he slipped in the draft. So the Browns get him, and they find that he is significantly behind Dylan Gabriel developmentally, let alone where Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco were at the time. So the idea was to allow him to develop. And generally, you don't allow somebody to develop by throwing them out there on the game field. And so Dylan Gabriel, they were getting him ready to play. They felt like a point would come over the course of the year where he would be ready to play. With Shedeur Sanders, the approach was different. It wasn't so much get him ready to play. It was develop him as a young player, which is what you do with a lot of guys who are drafted on day 3. And so that's sort of where the Browns were and where the Browns have been, and then where the Browns are now. And so now they'll try to get him ready to play a game against the Raiders, but this is what it's been. This is what it is. He's a 5th round pick who's a developmental player who has been coming through their system, who's treated basically like a practice squad player, because that's for the most part what he's been to this point. We'll see what they do to try to help him on Sunday, because I do think Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees, and that staff are going to be creative in finding ways to lean into his strengths. And I do think you saw some things like physically that you like in the game on Sunday. But this isn't like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or one of these guys where like the physical skill just jumps out at you. He's average when it comes to that too. So again, we'll see what it looks like on Sunday. I wouldn't have huge expectations for how it's going to look. And I don't think the Browns wronged him for not getting him first team reps, because he's just like any other day 3 draft pick who's being treated as a developmental type of prospect. Appreciate you guys coming out. You guys can get more answers to more of my questions if you leave them below. I will try and jump in there on the YouTube page and answer some questions if you want to leave them there. You can also give us any feedback there, or on my social media, at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook, at Albert _Breer on Instagram. Got one more Breer report coming for you this week. We'll be looking forward to week 12 tomorrow. We'll see you guys then.